Good morning, everyone, and welcome to AmericanScouser's morning coffee or tea with AmericanScouser. It is Wednesday, back in action as the number one dads, and it's all good. It's kind of like a quiet week. I still have the helicopter headset thing going, but hopefully that's going to come to an end soon. And number two, Gordo is with us.
Yeah, retired the mom coffee. I'm on the road today, so I got myself some Dunkin'. But I did get my coffee in, and I was enjoying that this weekend. So excited about that.
Reckless coffee, it is. Yes, as always. Thanks for that. I was just talking to Dean yesterday, actually. And yes, we were always in the mornings brought to you by Reckless Coffee Roasters that Gordo is literally hooked on at this point.
Yeah,
So
I
he's
am,
like
yeah.
crack. Speaking of being hooked on, though, is it just me that Dunkin' Donuts has almost like a McDonald's fry thing going with their coffee,
yeah.
where you can kind of like you can taste it and you can be like, "That's Dunkin',"
Yep. It doesn't matter where it's at. Even like the Keurigs, they like suck. Like it's hard to get a good cup of coffee from a Keurig. Yeah. Even the Keurigs are a little bit better than like the Starbucks ones. So.
And another mellow midweek. It is John. What's happening?
I'm good, Tim. Nothing definitely happened last weekend, so I'm fine. Just coping here.
Yes, coping. I actually got over it really fast. Not really fast, I should say, but I've done so good in terms of avoiding everything that it's been great.
Perfectly healthy behavior.
Up here, there was no Super Bowl. That's right. Where I'm at. So it's working like a.
There was a Super Bowl? I don't recall there being a Super Bowl.
I thought it was just an Usher concerts.
But it was postponed.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Usher and Taylor Swift concert at the same time. Putting a bet for the next football match. I'm assuming Alonso is not going to get you good odds.
Probably, yeah.
At this point, right? It's probably looking like the Thomas Frank. Man, it's rough for a football flashback where there's no midweek soccer, so he has to go bet on just random things. Like will we see Taylor Swift and Kelsey on TV today and stuff like that. But yeah, good luck with that. I don't know. We were talking a lot about it on the Monday night podcasts. I think that's the first time we talked about Alonso and stuff like that. I know we're all watching a lot more Leverkusen than we did before, so there's that. But I don't know how far it's gonna go, and I don't even know if it's too. In some ways, I want to get it done and early with, but at the same time, I don't even know if it is too early. I mean, if you're Leverkusen, do you really want your manager just going around flirting with people?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing too. It's sort of like Man City in the Premier League. We're like, yeah, sometimes Bayern Munich doesn't have a good first half, but they're always good in the second half of the season, and they always make good, and they always crush whatever points gap there is. It's very much like a Man City thing. So while they are sitting high, while they did have to beat, and I mean it was very nice. I was a little annoyed at how good Bayern Leverkusen was against Munich, because I was like, oh great, that's it. Everyone's just going to come their pants on all the Liverpool media sites because this guy tactically set up and basically just shushed Bayern Munich. It was like a perfect performance, but there's still a long way to go, and it's Bayern Munich. So I would be nervous if I was Bayer Leverkusen fans, because I'd be like, all right, is this guy's head going to be in there? Because it's a big couple months ahead for them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They could have a Dortmund collapse and stuff like that. They've gotten away, they squeaked out a couple of wins, but I don't know. I guess it's an excuse to watch Bundesliga. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. People kind of forget it's just 5 points. They get a draw, 2 consecutive draws, or a loss and the draw, and then it's all back in business. And that whole thing about getting Alonso as early as possible. I don't think Alonso himself would like that, because he's entirely focused on a title challenge in the other side, on another league, against a team that's won it for 13 years in a row. So it wouldn't make sense from a Leverkusen perspective, even though as much as we Liverpool fans want it, kind of done and over with, so we kind of have a picture of what's going to be going on next year. It's just the reality of it. But like I said, over the last few shows, still hasn't sunk in, still living in the present. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, people. Klopp is still our manager for me.
Football Flashback is really looking for some returns over here, going for Jose. I'm sure Jose is on actually
That
he said,
from Gordo is just like
but I mean, yeah, I don't think so. I just don't see it. He does not fit in a multitude of ways, and be careful what you wish for too. I understand he's a winner, but not a winner in. First of all, his shelf life is even shorter than Klopp, and that's why I wouldn't want him anyway, because his shelf life is 2 to 3 years. And then, like I say, his style of play and stuff like that is first of all, we do have a new manager, so no need to worry because Gordon Erickson is going to join our management team. So this kind of like was made to happen at the end. I know Gordo, you said it kind of puts Liverpool in a very very good light. Like overall, I think it's almost like a feel good story.
Yeah, I monitor a lot of the other fan sites and on Facebook and Twitter, and like one of my favorite things to do, if you're ever feeling down, go on the Blue Moon fan chat. It's like a forum online, and some of the stuff, I mean, like how good the team is and how much they've won, those guys really know how to bitch. And sometimes it's like, oh man, at least I'm not that delusional. So it is nice to dip in here once in a while. But yeah, it's from everybody. It seems as though that the club has really been put in a good light for that, and kind of going out of their way to make sure that the guy gets one more dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like a nice story overall, John. It's, I mean, I'll be honest, like I only catch probably the highlights of the Legends games unless it's the only thing going on that weekend or something like that. And it's like the soccer fix and stuff, but it's a good story. And I don't know, like you kind of like need some of this stuff with all the dirt in the sport right now.
Yeah, definitely. It's also a good feel good story considering what's going to be happening to us at the end of the season, with Klopp leaving and all that. But yeah, delighted for Ericsson. I mean, I always expected Liverpool to go ahead and do their side of the thing when Klopp kind of mentioned it on his press conference, like, oh, it's a good thing, I'd gladly offer my seat. So it's a great gesture, but I expected it, which is a good thing. Like, we know that our manager is a good guy. We know that the guys around him, are a bunch of good guys. The fact that we expected it to happen. So, yeah, it's great that it's going to happen.
Oh, man, Football Flashback is going with all the names over here. But hold on, let's stick with this because I have like a couple of random topics that I want to pick your guys' brain on this morning. So let's start with the manager thing first. I thought it was kind of funny that
I thought it was too. I saw that.
After the World Cup was probably the toughest period, says Calvin Phillips, when Pep came out and said I was fat, basically. He was right to do so, but there are different ways to go about it.
Listen.
I did not disagree with him, but obviously I took a big knock on my confidence, how I felt at City. Okay, so how do you guys think that, like, how did Pep say it? Like, Pep is like, holy shit, you're fat? Or, like, because he said it's the way he said it. Or is Calvin going around saying, like, do these shorts make me look fat? Or something like that on the practice pitch? Like, what did he say? And what do you guys think? Like, Gordo, do you even care how your manager tells somebody, hey, you're fucking fat?
No, because all right. So like body shaming, I know now is like not something you're allowed to do. And so, but thank God. Let's put it into perspective. His job is to be fit. And every single day, he has access to the best diet and nutritionalists. He has access to the best training facilities, the best recovery systems, and he's fat. So in that sense, I think it's not so much body shaming, it's you're not doing your job. And I think Pep, as your boss, is allowed to say something about your weight and your health.
Yeah, I think that's the great point, because in the same, first of all, yeah, the body I didn't honestly, I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't even think about the body shaming thing, because like you said, it's your fucking job to be fit. So I mean, if it was your job to be fat, I mean, if you were a sumo wrestler and you're like a skinny dude, you're like, dude, you got to put on some weight. So it's like the same thing. It goes with like whatever your profession is. I mean, I think the greatest point over there is really no excuse for it's not like, oh, I couldn't go and things, so I had to stop by McDonald's and stuff. Calvin probably calls and says, hey, I want like a salmon sandwich, and then somebody like runs it over there, wherever the hell he's at. So, John, it takes away any excuses, and isn't he right to be called out, regardless of how Pepe said it? Because he talks about he was right to do so. There are different ways to, like, what is he gonna like subtly be like, hey, you know what? I got your Excel jersey for you instead of the L. Like is he just gonna subtly hint?
Right.
Like,
Hey,
what is
he's
he
gonna be
expecting?
like, hey, Calvin. or something like that. But I honestly, the whole saying it thing, the manner of him saying it, that's his job. It's his job to keep his players in tip-top shape. And Pep knows the levels that needs to be, reached for Man City to win the league, because, last year it was them and Arsenal kind of folded over the last 4 games. But with us being in the title challenge and everything, he knows the levels that needs to be, consistently achieved throughout the year. So him going down on Calvin is just like, it is what it is, man. Like, call a turd, right? If you're fat, you're fat. Like, what are we gonna do, man? And exactly, it just doesn't make sense. Like, how does this happen? You're in training sessions all the time and all that. Like, I know he doesn't see the pitch as much anymore, but he's still a professional footballer being, paid millions of pounds each year. So it's ridiculous. And Phillips probably came from Leeds, going probably still to an extent surprised as to how, we always talk shit about Pep, but if there's one thing he's best at, it's making the most out of an excellent squad. Like, there's a lot of managers that underachieve with squads where they're supposed to do really well. Pep absolutely maximizes that. And this is an example of it. Like, all those fine margins, we talk about fine margins. I'm sure Pep has his own version of fine margins. Like, oh, hey, you're like 2 pounds overweight. You got to do something about that. And you know what? Fair enough. For Phillips, like, bro, you got to step up. There's a reason you're not getting some playing time. And your comments here, it just clearly shows why he doesn't really get a look in, I would say. Right?
Yeah, I mean, Ryan says, I don't think there's anything subtle about Pep. He would just call him fat.
Yeah,
I almost feel like it was more passive aggressive. And that's why, you know what I mean? Like, it was more like,
I don't
where's Kyle Walker? Did Calvin eat him or something? Like something like smart ass, something like that, instead of just, maybe he didn't pull him to the office and be like, Calvin, man, lay off the Cheetos or something. I don't know, like what he said, but
it's like he came from Bielsa, right?
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Who was probably maybe one of the worst people at emotional stuff, and also like cut out sweets and everything. They were allowed like water and crackers, like for that.
Yeah,
they fired everyone in the nutritional department. You get water, crackers, and everything else in there. So it doesn't. It's interesting that Pep hurt his feelings and he didn't say anything about Bielsa.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and he does say that he was right to be called out. He just didn't like the way it was called out. So he says, to be fair, though, being serious, this might be maybe going through depression. Food tends to go for dopamine. Yes, I mean, I can see why he would put on the weight. And, that's one thing. And I don't know, like, how we came about it. But at the end of the day, I don't know, like, as a professional, there are certain things you're responsible for. And you have a ton of resources. And I understand what Serzi is saying there. It just feels like, come on, man, you can. And afterwards, to kind of say, I think I would have more respect if he said, I was going through a tough time, put on the weight, blah, blah, blah. And it was like a kind of a rough time. But he's talking about like how he was told that he was like overweight and stuff like that. I think that's what gets me more in terms of saying, instead of like kind of owning up to it.
I'd rather he talk to Pep as well directly instead of airing it out to the media. Like,
it feels like sympathy points, right?
Right. You really think like he's not getting any game time now? You really think airing out your dirty laundry to the media is going to get you into the starting 11 anytime soon? Even more so now that you were like, oh, he called me fat and I don't like it.
And honestly, I think I know he came off the bench this last game, right? But I did see him in the game before in West Ham where he pretty much gave away the goal. I can't remember who they were playing, Chelsea or somebody. He gave away the goal, and then he was just like freaking brutal. But you can kind of tell that it's an adjustment period. The funny thing is, his name was thrown around a lot for like us when we were, looking for a CDM. And honestly, I hate to say it, I was like, it might not be a bad ordeal if he was on the cheap at the time, but obviously he was not playing. I mean, Pep rotates a lot, and there has to be a reason why you're not being rotated. So I'm assuming they're having kind of like a buyer's remorse on that thing, not only because of weight. I don't think he's been there for a while now and he hasn't gotten a chance. So it can't just be weight. I'm assuming there's like, he just does not fit or whatever. We
got the right guy in Endo. Like with Endo, he struggled early on massively. How many times did he miscontrol the ball, lead to a shot on target for the opposition? But he stuck with it. Like, I mean, not comparing him, I am comparing him to Phillips because, Phillips is a tremendous player, really good, defensive midfielder on his day. But Endo working through his troubles, staying with it, and now being arguably a first choice name, not even arguably, probably a first choice name in the team sheet, considering how he started, is a good sign of how he just mentally blocks out the criticism and just gets on with it. With Phillips here, he's still playing at a team that's almost guaranteed to win at least 2 trophies this year, right? And he's, going on about this. It just, I get it. It might be depression. It might be something, right? But he seems like the kind of guy who'd kick up a fuss if he's not getting any playing time or if he's not selected consistently. So as Ryan said here, big bullet dodged. I would agree.
I don't think it's the biggest. Who do you like? That brings up a good point. Like who do you think is the biggest bullet we've dodged? I'd say either Fred or Mkhitaryan over the last 10 years that we were linked to heavily that we didn't end up getting, and then who flopped with whoever got him.
I honestly think Fred would do really well with us.
Really?
I think so. Having seen him in Fenerbahce now, I think he would do really well with us. I think in United, he was set up to fail. Like when Fred plays behind as a midfielder, behind guys who are actually pressing up top, I think he would be a lot better. The dude is great at placing himself in passing lanes and stuff like that. I think when he was United, when you have people up top like Anthony and like Rashford and stuff who don't run or press or anything, I mean, you're just set up to fail. You're going against 2 against 5 at all times in midfield. So you do look like ass, or you look like, incompetent because you can't keep up. But I think he was kind of set up to fail there. I see a Fred, and I've never seen this guy so happy when he's playing at Fenerbahce, because after it looks like a weight off his shoulders from getting that criticism. Because you look at, they're better now slightly. At least they're getting the results right now. But you look at that top 3 and the work rate they put in, especially when he was there. They didn't even have Højlund, who actually does press and run. So I think I would have taken Fred. Do we put Werner in that category, Timo? Or is that another guy that would have done well with us?
I was thinking Timo, but then I feel like he would have done really well. The first 2 names that actually came to mind for me was obviously a recent one, Caicedo. Second is, although with Caicedo, that is pretty debatable. But
yeah, I think he'd fall into the category of he'd do better here.
And Thomas Lemar back then. I saw him when he left to where did he go? Atletico, I think, and he looked lazy as hell. And I was like, yeah, it's a big bullet dodged for this guy. Timue Bakayoko as well. From that Monaco squad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I believe he was linked to us as well alongside Fabinho. We got the right guy.
Yeah, I think so.
God. Yeah.
So this is, I think, Fred found his level. There's a reason why Edwards tricked United into going for Fred and we got Fabinho. I think, look, the dude was starting for Brazil's midfield, right? Over Fabinho. Because I think the style is totally different. He's not as physical. I don't think he's a CDM unless you have 2 CDMs. He doesn't play as a CDM in Turkey, for example. He plays more like the Curtis Jones role, or he's more like the attacking midfielder. Because Fenerbahce does play kind of like a 4-3-3, but it's more like a 4-2-1, and he's like the attacking of those 2 midfielders that sits back kind of a deal. I really think he would have been good for us, and we would have gotten something out of him. He would have been a great rotation piece. I'd rather have Fred than Thiago.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, right now.
At least he would be
right
he would be there. He would be like an actual person. By the way, I didn't want to miss this, but Ryan says Endo struggled because of strength. Preach, brother, preach. I mean, okay, that's probably part of it. Not being used to having somebody else in his right pockets as a defensive midfielder. Every time you turn around, like, oh, what are you doing over here? Like, should you be out there, kind of thing. But I think the biggest thing was probably the pace of the league overall, and I think he's understood that you got to pick your spots when you're going to turn with the ball. In the Premier League, you can't just take it and turn around every time. Sometimes you're just gonna drop it right back and like move around, because I think he found that out the hard way.
Top class defensive midfielders, from other leagues come to the Premier League and struggle with the pace, right? Like Endo struggled early, but then he's adjusted. It's just, I don't want to keep harping on praise on this guy because I might end up jinxing him, but it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's just that I just remember everyone's reaction when he was signed. They were like, "Who? Like, who is this guy?" Everyone's like on Google and everything, but now here he is. He's probably on some people's first choice 11s. He's in the conversation for mine. It's just, I'm really happy for him. That's all I'm trying to say here. Really happy for him.
Yeah, I mean, when the season started, we didn't care that he was leaving for the Asian Cup. We're like, oh yeah, that's right, he's going too. And then it suddenly became like, can Mo go and he stay or something, because we don't have anybody there. But Ryan says he'd rather have John on the bench than Thiago. But then he says, never mind. You know what? I mean, what's the difference? Neither one is probably going to go in. So might as well have John get his wish and sit on the bench.
Yeah.
Put on the jersey and get your day as a fan. We should do that. He should just...
Yeah, Thiago's spot is filled by just random fans every once in a while. Just naming a random fan for Thiago's spot.
Fabinho was playing. Hold on. Fabinho's passing was never really that good. I would argue. See, Serzi doesn't agree. I know what you guys think about this. See, this like opens up. This is not the can of worms I was going for, but let's go with this one. I would say. Yes, like Endo's passing, I would say is better than Fabinho's passing.
Yeah, I think like Fabinho was always trying to break lines, right?
Like, yes, I don't remember Fabinho going in between lines.
Yeah, exactly, right. And that's, I think the biggest difference was he was like more forcing issues, and it was more of like a lay it off and someone else does the work. It wasn't a breaking lines between midfield and defense.
And I don't know if that's because I have to coming back to this, but he would get it and play it wide, either to Robertson or Trent. And that's the season where those guys then would just whip that ball in and then we would score. I mean, he was a ball winner.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's when I think of Fabinho, that's what I more think of, I think. With Endo, obviously, sample sizing is a lot smaller than what we've seen out of Fabinho. But I do see him, maybe because he's done it more in the past too, but I do see him more looking for those passes in between the lines as opposed to just playing out wide or just saying, Mac, come here and get this and do something with it. Like he just does not do that. Whereas Fabinho was never like, I don't remember Fabinho building play. Like he would drop back and give it to Van Dijk or whatever to build play. Or he would drop back and Matip would make one of his runs and stuff like that. That's what when I look back on Fabinho's Liverpool career, I think that's what I'm going to probably think more about. So we'll see. I mean, like I say, I think, aside from the jinx that John might put, I think he's right. He's like Endo has been like extremely like valuable. And he's 31 now, right? So at that position, we probably have a couple more years till he finishes the contract.
It's something that's more suited, I guess, to our style now. Like right now, obviously we're doing like an inverted Trent, so most of our stuff is going to be coming from the midfield. So alongside Trent, we kind of need guys that could kind of break the lines as well. So with Fabinho, he didn't really need to break the lines because, like you said, all he had to do was spray it out on the sides, let Salah, Trent, and even Henderson, Robertson do their thing. So different horses for different courses. I would say both have their roles, and both are excellent players, Fabinho and Endo.
Yeah, it almost felt like we had that midfield who would just win the ball, and then you would throw Robertson and Trent up top. It was almost like they were the front five, and midfield was more playing D, it felt like. I mean, it was like a good balance that you had with the players, whereas it's obviously totally changed now, but the personnel has changed, so that's kind of like natural as well. So here's what I wanted to really ask you guys. So I was watching Champions League yesterday, and I hate Martin Tyler with a passion. Like, I wish there was some kind of, I don't want to wish death on people. Like, I do have this like car I want to load up with some commentators that has like an unfortunate accident. But let's be nicer. Let's hope for like a vocal cord accident for Martin Tyler where he cannot, announce anymore. But is it just me, or do you guys get the same? Because you guys' situation, I think, is going to be different than mine. I have rooted for the big underdog in European games when I root for Fenerbahce, like if they're taking on Napoli or Milan or something like that. Is it just me that there's like a ridiculous bias supporting the big team from commentators?
I noticed that, yeah, sometimes, especially if said big team is an English team. Loads.
Actually, yes. I mean, I almost have a bit more sympathy for that because it's still your country. Whereas, I don't know, that used to be a thing when I was growing up. That used to be a thing in Turkey, and I know it wasn't. I remember watching. That's when the Italian league was really good, and like Milan would play, and then Inter Milan would play and stuff. And Inter Milan fans would root for the team that's playing against Milan, kind of like when we watch. Yesterday, and we're rooting for Copenhagen and stuff like that. And in Turkey, you were like, man, we cannot comprehend how that works because this is your country, national pride, blah, blah, blah. But then as teams started getting more success, because I think because we never had success, whoever gets it, good for them kind of a deal, that became the same thing. Now you root against the team that's playing against Galatasaray and stuff like that. So I can kind of understand if it's your own team. But like yesterday, I watched that Real Madrid-Leipzig game. Like, it's annoying, and I'm not even a Leipzig fan, that how over the top they support the team that's not the underdog. But then if the underdog pulls something in the last freaking 3 minutes, they kind of act like, oh, we always root for the underdog, us kind of a thing. I don't know. It's just maybe I'm more paranoid because I watch games where Fenerbahce is playing, and it's almost like, but then how come are we paranoid that I almost feel like Liverpool does not get that benefit of that somehow?
No, they don't, because this is biased because we're Midwest, but it happens a lot in American sports too, where like the East Coast, West Coast teams get a whole lot of hype, and the Midwest teams and maybe not for the NFL because of Taylor Swift now. And I know we weren't supposed to touch on that today, but I like now once I said it out loud, I was like, actually, the Chiefs got a lot of media coverage, but I think that was more Taylor Swift than anything. But like for instance, like when the Blackhawks were doing really good, it was still always like the Rangers, because that's where like the ESPN bases were, right? So like that's all they cared about were like the Knicks and the Lakers, and like they get all the hype, and the Midwest teams usually don't. So I think there is a little bit of that. But when you watch, I think sometimes the commentators are like, all right, where's my fan base? Like, who's watching today? And the bigger teams are always going to have more people watching, especially if it's in like American feed. They know like, oh, how many people are going to be watching that are Copenhagen fans? So let's just pump up Man City because we're trying to boost ratings. And I almost like when they do the underdog thing where they flip and they pretend like they were rooting for those guys the whole time, because it reminds me that like we do this, right? And all of us, I don't think any of us are like, yeah, I'm a total expert. Like, we're just talking out of our ass every day. And then when they do stuff like that, I'm like, oh, they're talking out of their ass too. Like, I could do that job. Like,
and that's been annoying though. It feels like more fake, John, because they pulled it at the very end and they were like, oh, I guess this is not working out. So let's hop on this a little bit. Peter Drury, is he a Liverpool fan? I don't know. Like, I really like Peter, the more I listen to him, the more I feel like some of that stuff is semi-scripted. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it might be semi-scripted, but it's exactly what I was going to say. I feel like he's hype for every team. Like, at least from what I observe, like whether it's a smaller team scoring or a bigger team scoring, I feel like he gives the same energy for either team. Personally, I don't think he's a Liverpool fan. I just think he's just a great commentator. Although I do agree that sometimes, he probably wrote this line before the game in anticipation if someone was going to score. So I get that vibe from him a lot.
When they do that, when it's like, that doesn't really work, but I know you've been wanting to say something like that. Like where do I put this? Because this is a great line. This is gonna, this is the do you believe in miracles? This is my chance to shine. Right?
And I feel like more commentators that it's funny because we were just talking about this with my brother, because we noticed like there are some iconic calls, right? And what made them iconic is, we look back like from our childhood, like back in Turkey, and there were like some crazy games because at the time, like Turkish soccer sucked as a whole. So like these little victories, I remember Fenerbahce beating Bordeaux away and stuff like that. And there were some iconic calls that we still remember. They were like, holy cow. It's kind of like that do you believe in miracles kind of thing for the US. I feel now these commentators almost over try to like be able to get that. So like they think of something in the shower, they get out, they write it on their wrist, and then all night they hope that they're like, and then they're just like, let's see if this hits. I think it's a good line. I feel like there's like an over try now of like trying to be that moment.
Yeah, in a Wolves Burnley game or something, like a midweek, like what are you doing? But there is one thing, like Stephen Warnock, he was part of LFC TV for a while, and now he's moved to like mainstream. He pointed something out recently. I know he's a little biased, obviously, because he's an ex-Liverpool player, but he said like the media really loves when Liverpool have something to lose, and like I still think there's that mentality of like the Thatcherism where like the whole country was sort of turn their back on the Northwest, and that does include United too, like Manchester as well. So we kind of have to sit there with it. But like in the Burnley game, I said like Ryan was talking about the Burnley match. It happened in the Bournemouth match too when the first half ended 0-0. They were like willing us to lose because we're in a title race. But the second that we start winning, it's like, oh, we knew this was going to happen the whole time. Like, and it's like, because sometimes I get anxiety and I'm like, I have to be like, there's still an hour to play. What is making me do this? And then when you start listening to the way the commentators are kind of turning the screw, they give you that anxiety because they're kind of trying to push a narrative for like, Burnley is going to do this huge upset. They haven't got any points this year, and it's taken them forever to get double digits in points, and there's still an hour to play, and they're like willing the game to turn. And you don't really hear that with like Real Madrid or Man City. Like even when Man City go down, the commentators don't switch on them. It's like,
you never say it's over for City and stuff.
Right, exactly.
What they would say.
So I think, and it was the same like with Mo. It's like before he left for AFCON, the only thing they were saying on the media was like, these are all the games he's going to miss. And then we started winning those games, and it wasn't like, wow, look at what Liverpool are doing with Mo. It's just like, let's not talk about it.
Yeah, just ignore that one. That's like too positive kind of a thing. Football Flashback, I don't know where are you, Football Flashback? Because obviously I do like the NBC sports coverage, but so guys, that go back to John, what actually Gordo was talking about a little bit ago, where they know, and maybe this is why we do not get the benefit of the doubt, they feed the animal, right? So they feed whoever is going to be watching. That's the angle they take. They know the media and how Liverpool's react, in the past. We always know that, they're always going to be us and stuff like that. So by doing that, giving us what we want, because that's what we're used to, are they just feeding the animal saying like, yep, this is what they want, this is what really gets Liverpool fans going? It's almost like posting like clickbait comment that and then be like, hey, see it, and then sit and wait for like the response.
I feel like it definitely gets us right, and it works a lot. It works. Like they won't stop doing it because they know it works. And you know what? That's fair enough. That's their job. It's the media's job to create a storyline and to get people talking. So it's fair enough. It's just that we as Liverpool fans, we need to have a responsibility not to bite the bait sometimes and just keep a level head because when we took that loss against Arsenal, a lot of people are like, it's over. Club season, we're not going to win the league. Yep. Like it was a damaging blow, and that may be the case, but nothing is set in stone until the end. So obviously the media can run whatever narratives they want. At the end of the day, it's up to us whether we want to believe it or not. So I think they go and push certain things sometimes because exclusively that we're Liverpool, right? And at this point, especially if you've been a fan for the longest time, I feel like you should be used to it and then just sift through the noise. You're just gonna be like, that's them again. They're just making this so to get us all going. So yeah, I think they do it definitely.
Yeah, I mean, then it goes back to what you're saying.
Mm.
Like a Real Madrid fan listening or watching is used to his team being like constantly glorified and stuff like that. Whereas as a Liverpool fan watching, we're more used to and expect to be kind of like, oh, Burnley is doing really well. It's like, are they really like, because we're watching the same game over here. Are they basically ultimately giving the people what they want?
And like I said too, and we're talking on a Liverpool podcast here, so it's like I know everyone will agree with me, but there is so much history steeped into it, which I think is it's hard when you first. And I've had a lot of friends who've like converted to the Premier League, and some of them have chosen to support Liverpool, and some haven't. And the ones who haven't or chose to support Liverpool, it took a while for them to really understand, right? Because if they get in the mid like 2010 or whatever is when they started supporting the EPL, that's so far removed from when Liverpool were actually a really good team, basically kings of Europe, and B, like all the hatred from the rest of the country that is still prevalent. I mean, there are places that we go all the time, and we'll be talking to people, and my dad will get stick from people all the time. Oh, you're from there. Like there was like one that always sticks out to me is my wife and I. Well, she was my wife at the time. We were just dating. I actually proposed to her on this cruise, but we're sitting next to this older couple from London, and my wife is talking to them, and she's like, "It's so funny that I can understand you, but I can't understand his dad, and you come from the same country." And they go, "Oh, where's your dad from?" And I said, "Liverpool." And he goes, "Oh yeah, no one can understand those people." And it's like, it's like, but that's the kind of, it's like, it's so far removed. It's hard for some people here in the U.S. to understand. There is such a hatred of that part of the country, and a lot of, I think, the media is kind of poised to that, because some of those people grew up in an era where they were probably tired of Liverpool winning the league every single year, and so it kind of feels like almost like New England Patriots type thing, where like it's just root for him to go down, or like a Mayweather. People tune in, they pay for Mayweather fights to watch him lose because they're tired of watching him win. I don't know, maybe there's something to that.
Or is it, see, I don't know, like John, you're purebred American over here, right? Kind of like exposed to American sports only. Well, not purebred, but exposed to American sports only, right? There is really no politics involved. Whereas I feel like maybe because it dates a lot back further. I mean, I don't know. Some of these franchises go way back too, but I feel like in Europe, in any country, really, I mean, I don't know about as much about Germany and stuff like that. Maybe politics wise with clubs, but I know it's okay. Now I have created an animal. Okay.
It's like that Super Bowl Volkswagen commercial that just kind of totally ignored the 1940s.
Is it like, yeah, I know, right? I was thinking the same thing. But is it like there's no politics in American sports as much? Like you don't think of a franchise being closer to the government, or am I still too much of a foreigner to even see those? I don't see anything. Whereas, like Gordo says, there's a lot of it in England. There's a lot of it in Turkey. I'm assuming, I know there's in Italy. Is that why, like, it's hard for people to comprehend and understand this Liverpool thing as an American, because they're not used to politics somehow getting in there?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it means, when we say it means more as our slogan, it definitely means more to the people of Liverpool. Their club definitely means more. And I feel like just, football, the sport in Europe in general, means more to the people from a societal standpoint than it is here in America. The way I see it, American sports, they're just a pastime, right? Most of it. Like, obviously you'd be gutted if your team loses and everything, and rightfully so. But then, compared to the fabric of, if you're a Scouser or if you're a longtime Liverpool fan who's not even from Liverpool, who supported the club for a long time, there is that connection that's formed from the club to the fans. And this goes beyond the pitch, like, because you've had, the local players, the managers, and even, the fans themselves having been embroiled in situations that, have some political implications that, the club have made a stand. The club have perfectly made it clear to them what their position is. So I think it's just something that comes with it at this point. And I honestly don't think that's something that we're never gonna experience here in the States. I feel like it's too corporate here. Like football is becoming really corporate, but it still has that human connection to the fans. Like I'd like to believe, right? I'm still very naive, right? But I'd like to believe it still has that connection to the fans compared to, you know, like the Golden State Warriors sponsored by Chase or something like that. It feels very corporate.
I mean, you know, first of all, moving of a team would be a concept that, like, when I first got here, they were like, "Oh, they're moving. They're moving. What? What is this?" Like, they're like, the lease is up. We're leaving. So that was like a concept that was so new to me when I first got here. But Gordo, you kind of like the in between phase over there. So as these people transferred over, is it hard for them to comprehend the politics behind it? I mean, not knowing it is one thing, but once you inject them those politics, is it hard for them to understand and comprehend how it fits in?
Oh, definitely. Because like John said, it's just not here. That we don't get that here because it's, I feel like in America too, we have the facade of like, it's America, like we're American. And you know, like, it's like, we hate each other on everything. But then it's like, you know, when you're like bad mouthing your parents or something like that to someone, and they're like, "Yeah, your dad is an idiot," and you're like, "Wait a minute, that's my fucking dad," and you're like, "Wait,
your dad is an idiot."
Yeah, that's literally America, right? We're like, we're talking trash about the country and our politics and like how fat we all are and like everything, and then it's like, "Yeah, America sucks." And you're like, "Hey, hang on a fucking second.
Yeah, hold on a minute. I live here. God damn it, it does not suck.
We're not fans. We're just overweight. You shouldn't have told us like that," says Calvin Phillips.
So it's hard for me, like, oh no, like, yeah, politics is definitely steeped within the club or within a lot of the clubs, and so I think that's a difficult concept to understand. But like when you were talking about with moving, I mean, MK Dons, when did MK Dons move? Wasn't it like Milton when it moved from Milton Keynes? What? Yeah, it was like what, the 70s, late 70s, 80s, and they still get shit for it. They got shit the other day from what was it, Preston North End? Like they scrubbed out the Dons, or they made their board look like it had an error on it and just said MK on it. And so yeah, the 80s. So like it's not a concept that they're familiar with. And here, I mean, how many times do people move? All the time. It's just because it is corporate. So it's difficult because we're not used to it. Like I still sometimes will have arguments with people and be like, "Oh no, I don't think that move affects that because of this or whatever." You know, like a lot of like what the club has to do is based around socialism of the 70s and 80s. So, and I think that everything that all the decisions that they make have to take that into account because it affects daily life.
Yeah, Wimbledon, that's right. But they had to, right? Because they went bankrupt.
It was a corporate.
Didn't Wimbledon go basically under, and then it was almost reformed under a new name, kind of thing? Or did they totally move?
I think they moved. It was like the first like commercial type move where they thought.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought it was more like a rebranding, if you will, because they could not use the same name because the old one was. And that's the thing. Yeah, it's like we were talking about this with Dom as well. Like we were on a live chat and we were talking about it. And I feel, John, there's a lot of people, especially like recent fans, and this is probably why I don't know at times. I mean, we have had a lot of struggles with our name because it's AmericanScouser, blah, blah, blah. And I talked about it before. Like people were like, "You guys don't know what Scouser means." And then like 2 weeks later, Kostas is the Greek Scouser, guys, and stuff. It's like, wait, what? But the thing that's like people have gone into the wrong room. They're actually like really right-wing politics and stuff like that. They either liked red or they liked winning, and, you know, like they joined in the last 5-6 years and they started, you know, I'm going to pick a team. I'll pick these guys. Right. I mean, that's how I picked the 49ers. I mean, not because they were wearing red, but I mean, you know, I was watching football and I was like, I like how these guys play because it was West Coast offense. It appealed more to me than Steelers, who ran like 90% of the time. And I didn't understand what the hell running was in football. So these guys are more fun to watch. I'm going to root for these guys. So I think a lot of people join like that. And then you tell them, "Hey man, you're kind of in the wrong room here because we don't roll like that." And they're like in denial and they're like, "Well, you know, I keep politics and sports separate. You can. And I've always thought, when we started the website, try to keep it as separate as possible. But it feels like it's almost impossible in Europe to do that.
Yeah, it is. And, for the people who, kind of joined in and were surprised at the politics of the club, well, it's like a bucket of water to the face. Like, oh, this is what they believe in. And you know what? Regardless of your beliefs, I feel like you just have to respect it. Whether you disagree or whether you agree or not, like, this is the history of the club. This is before you, and it's going to be there after you, long after you're gone. So regardless of what you believe rather, this is like an entity that's too seeped in history for, I feel like, because I don't always necessarily lean towards everything that Liverpool stands for. I lean towards a lot, but not everything. And I appreciate, and I respect the fact that, they have their stances, they have their own thing. And I feel like that's the gist of it all, should be, right? Sparky says it's politics. It's not politics, it's a religion. Yeah, probably to an extent. I feel like it's a mix of both, because, when you talk about people from Liverpool, they have certain stances on certain societal issues, right, that go beyond probably the sport. And this is a very delicate topic here. I'm trying to mince my words because
it's an ethos. It's an ethos. Less religion, more of an ethos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a bit better because I'm not a religious person, so I can't relate. But but I can't. Yeah, I get that. Like, there's I don't want to say cultish either. Ethos is probably the only word, and I can kind of like think of another substitute. But have you had people who have entered the room and then found out, they were like, oh shit, this is kind of like it's almost like a different meeting. I didn't think this was like a AA meeting. Back outs, or are they like, well, I'm here now, and then just hang out?
We've had both, and I know, I think I know who you're referring to, because it used to be involved with us a little bit, but we had a couple of arguments about it off air, and I still see him kind of hanging around in some of the Facebook groups. So he obviously, either came to terms with it or just kind of tries to totally separate it, and I think that's sometimes, if you're American, it's easier to do that. Be like, yeah, it just doesn't. I'm not gonna link the ethos and religious and political stuff.
Is that due to the distance? Is it easier?
It is, and the fact that, like, you just have never had to do that with teams. Like,
I guess, okay,
it's so easy because I've never like equated, like the Bulls with religion, being, Roman Catholic or whatever, Catholicism. It's so I think it's easier to do that. You can kind of just forget that it's a thing.
To be fair, Gordo, and to kind of make it on the lighter note here, my dad said that Michael Jordan was the closest thing to Jesus on that note of religion. So
I think there's a lot of people that would agree with him for sure. But yeah,
if that's the case, Kobe was the second coming.
Right, so Kobe was the second coming.
I've had people like jump ship, but those people I think would have jumped ship anyways. They're not even supporting it so much anymore, the whole sport as it is. Just kind of dabbling every once in a while, just like got caught up in it. Like, I saw a TikTok video that almost made me cry the other day. It was shared to me by
somebody. Cry?
Almost. It was like the peak of football happened. It was the 2006 World Cup. And like, for me, that was such a big moment because all of my friends started to get involved into soccer because of it. It was just like the coming of all the greatest like players that we had seen in a generation. It was a fantastic tournament from start to finish. It was hosted correctly. And I feel like it was one of the first ones that like was kind of shoved in our face in America, with like so much coverage, media coverage. And I remember a lot of people that I was friends with that just didn't understand the sport at all started to get into soccer. And it became like, instead of, oh, let's go play football, it was like, hey, do you want to go play soccer? I know you like this. And like, everyone was kind of playing that summer and then got into the sport. And some of those people have backed out since. And I've had that experience too, where like, they're just like, this is just too intense for me. Like, I can't, I can't make this a part of my life. Right. It's just like, I'm going to dabble every once in a while. I can't like, start getting tattoos and go to war for this team.
And that goes back to, I think, because that's how American sports are. Yeah. Right. You're like, sure. Like, you're all Golden State now, but I mean, I remember Golden State was like the laughing stock.
Yeah,
for,
yeah, yeah. I
like the
was about
longest time. So you kind of check out those, and now you're like, I'll come back. You guys rebuilt already, huh? I'm
Yeah,
back, people. And then you do that for 3 seasons, and then you can take another 5 years off.
yeah, I was kind of gonna make a point on that. Like when I started watching basketball, I was a fan of a player more than a team. So wherever, growing up, Allen Iverson was my guy. When he went to Philly, he went to Denver, he went to Detroit, all his stops. I went where he went. And yeah, I kind of, mellowed down a little bit, obviously with Steph Curry being the closest thing I see to an Iverson, I kind of stuck with him. And lucky for me, he's kind of like a one-team guy. So he stayed with the Warriors all his career. So I've been a Warriors fan for all this time. But yeah, to your point, Tim, there is that level of loyalty that's found in football. Nah, it's almost non-existent here in America. There are people who would stick with one team, but it's more liquid. It's not set in stone. Like if, for example, we're Liverpool fans. We're probably Liverpool fans for life. And, I actually put a marker down and told my friends, like, I'd probably stay a Warriors fan now for the rest of my life, because this whole mentality of supporting Liverpool kind of seeped into my American sports fandom too. So I was like, I just don't want to support the Warriors through the good times, because I only started, supporting them through the good times when they won 4 championships. So the rebuild is happening. It's on the horizon. The team is declining. And I'm just like, you know what? Might as well stick with it. Right. I feel like that's.
I have news for you. You're getting old and lazy. You're like, you know what? I'm over here.
Yeah. You might as well just go and stay with one team.
I got all this merchandise.
Yeah. I got like 5 Warriors hats. I have like 3 Warrior jerseys. Might as well stick. It's the practical way as well.
Thursday says Liverpool were my life before her, so I love them more. That's why I had to learn how to cook. Yeah, and I get comfy on the couch, I'm sure. But see, is that a young generation thing? Like the dancing TikTok John talking there in terms of, because I can't follow a player. Or is that like an American thing? That's what I'm trying to figure out here. Like I cannot follow. That's why I have a tough time watching and getting invested in sports where it's not a team. Because I can root for a team. I'm not going to root for a golfer or a tennis player. Like if they're playing each other, I might be like, I want that guy to win. He's less annoying or whatever. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I hope he wins everything. And I just keep chasing that guy. I couldn't care less. It's not doing me any good. Not that Liverpool winning is doing us any good in our personal lives. But I feel like, I can support a team and whoever is wearing the jersey. And if they leave, I might, if I like Bobby, right? I want Bobby still to do well, but I'm not following Bobby anymore. He's gone. So, I might see stats or whatever pop up, but I don't, I root for a team. Is that a generation thing or is that like an American thing? Because I think John is right. Like a lot of people like follow LeBron around wherever he goes. I just started to find it because maybe I build so much hatred for the opposition usually when I'm rooting for a team. Like, I don't know, let's say you're a big Mo Salah fan. I mean, if Mo, we can't even comprehend that if Mo goes to Everton or something, we're going to be like, well, I guess we're rooting for Everton now because it's just no way. Is it like a youth thing or is it an American thing, Gordo? Because you're kind of in between both. You're younger than me.
I think it's a youth American thing because like no, like,
it's cop outs.
Well, no, because I think like as a kid, you don't really understand the whole loyalty and everything, and like you kind of do gravitate. I remember getting Sports Illustrated for Kids. I don't even know if they still make that magazine anymore, but they always used to have like a player profile, and in the player profile you get like this like pull out poster, and so my room was like covered in the monthly posters, and so from a lot of that, like Allen Iverson was a big guy in my youth as well, and so like I liked him. I didn't really get into basketball, but I did it for hockey where I liked the player. Now that player ended up he was part of the New Jersey Devils for his entire career, so I ended up liking the Devils growing up.
Yeah.
So, but as I got older, I understood like the loyalty thing is much bigger. You can't just jump around the team. So I do, but in the same breath, I don't think you have that in England or in Europe because that like mentality is pushed into you your entire life. So I don't think that you get that. Plus the flip side is, and my dad will like always describe this, is you had different levels, right? So like, you could go and see a 5th tier team on a Friday night or whatever, on a Tuesday night, and support them and be able to support all these other teams without like causing any loyalty issues, because this is my hometown, but this is my EPL team or whatever. So you're afforded that too, where you sort of get multiple teams that you can support without really affecting loyalties.
So is that why you feel, John, that you're like more Golden State now? Like we're doing like a case study over here of a young kid. It's like, hold on, he's young. Let's ask him.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
By the way, also check out Patreon, whatever I would to call it, because we will feature John's dancing TikToks as promised. Yes, I think we should set a thing like once we reach so many paid followers, that's when you release the dance video. But let's go back. Like, I can see, like, as a kid, you liked Iverson because you're like, sometimes a player makes you love a sport, right? That you may not be into. And then you really like it. And then you kind of like, yeah, they're moving around. So you're like, oh, shit, now he's over here. So you go that way. But then as you get older and now you kind of like Curry, but now you're kind of like built into a team too.
Yeah.
And like Goto says, you have the hats.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's probably an age thing as well, right? Like, as you said, Tim, you probably said it in jest, but it's probably true. And I'll add that the whole Iverson thing was purely circumstantial, because when I grew up in the Philippines, we barely got any NBA.
Oh, okay.
So whenever there was any NBA on, guess who was on? It was Allen Iverson, because like us Filipinos, we don't grow to a decent size. Like, I think our average height is like 5'6", 5'7", and Iverson was 6 feet in a big man's league. So you can understand why we'd like a guy like him. He fought.
Oh,
like,
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense, actually. It's funny, but it does make sense.
Yeah, he fought tooth and nail, man. And so it was a circumstantial thing, and obviously it kind of moved on to just me following him wherever he goes. But seeing Curry, seeing how he stuck with the franchise, how he elevated the franchise to where he is now, that coinciding with my Liverpool fandom of, starting to support Liverpool, seeing how it is, how Liverpool fans or football fans support their team in general, made me appreciate a one club player more, supporting a team more, right? And sticking with a team, I guess, through the thick and thin. And that probably comes with age as well, knowing that it doesn't make sense to keep jumping whenever it doesn't work out, or just because your team sucks you're gonna leave for another one. I think that comes with maturity too. So I think probably that's maybe the case of that's the John case study. Maybe that's my story for whoever's interested.
I'm glad you said it, but like I can see people in the Philippines like, we can do it, guys. We can. Like, you don't need to be tall.
I just, one of the best parts about Iverson, he was a great player, but one of my favorite things about like what he did culturally is the fact that like the league was like, hey, you can't have those gang tattoos, and he was like, all right, let's design shooting sleeves. And now like he's been out of the league for what, 15 years now. Everyone's still using, and all the kids, I remember growing up and people having shooting sleeves in like high school, and they're like, that's to cover up his gang tattoo. It's not like it doesn't help him shoot, or like he's just naturally good.
He was horrible.
Forearm warm.
Yeah, like everyone says that was for shooting. He's a horrible shooter. Like his percentages are pretty bad. Like, so it just goes against the logic there. But yeah.
Ryan says, I'm 46, and in my day, you're a silly young buck. I'm in the 50s now. This is so depressing, people. It's only been 2 days in, but it's not going well. 46, and in my day, you supported teams no matter what the season looked like. You chose your team by 12, and in no way can change. Yeah, what is the age for that, I wonder? I mean, like, okay, look, the Fenerbahce thing for us, and because of my grandfather, who, by the way, I will probably share this sometime next week. They have actually made like a little, like a whole, like a plaque and stuff like that now in the Fenerbahce Museum under his name. It's supposed to be unveiled, I think, sometime like next week or something like that. My brother was saying. Tim, there's like a documentary coming out with Fenerbahce winning the cup during World War I. Representing Turkey and stuff like that against like the invading countries and stuff. Anyway, there's like a movie coming out for it, so there's a lot of going back to the history kind of a deal. So like my grandfather's being featured in a bunch of stuff because he has actually won like trophies, international trophies and stuff back in the day. So anyway, like because of him, it was built in for us. Like there was no chance. Like you would be. That's why like I know like Sparky's in the audience today. Like when we talked about like Everton and Liverpool like split and stuff like that. Yeah, there was no such scenario in our team. Like nobody could be like, you know what, I think I'm gonna do Galatasaray because you will live in the streets in our family. That was like that's your choice, man. If that's the choice you're making, it comes as a package deal. You'll be staying in the garden less of your life, not inside the house, kind of a thing. So I never had that. But then like I started Liverpool like in '84, so it's been like 40 years now. But I feel like, was there an age for you, Gordon, or because of your dad, you're kind of like built in as well?
Oh yeah, it was built in. I had no choice. I remember like the first real time that I kind of grasped how amazing the sport was that 99 Munich versus United Champions League final. And I remember going, oh, like I never said that I liked Manchester United, but I was like, wow, that's awesome. And I remember my uncle being like, yeah, you get your shit kicked out. I was like maybe 9 or 10. He's like, you get the shit kicked out of you if you went downtown and said something like that. And I was like, oh, it's serious. Like, this is serious. So I think 9 years old was probably when I realized like, oh, you can't like Manchester United. You have to like Liverpool. And my granddad, his name was Sam, so Sam Lee. And at the time when my dad was growing up, we had the player Sammy Lee, and people would call the house on Friday nights and wish him a good game, have a good game. So like my dad's entire life was like all surrounded with
nice.
With
so cool.
And one of his aunt actually was one of the house cleaners for Bill Shankly. So like I don't think my dad had a choice either growing up of whether it was Everton or Liverpool.
It's so cool.
Yeah, that's like interesting. London Cop TV says my first game was the FA Cup final '88 as an 8-year-old. We have like slightly older audience this morning. Join us. Fell in love with You'll Never Walk Alone. My dad was Tottenham and didn't talk to me for weeks for supporting Liverpoolies. Yeah, that's odd. I can't even imagine a scenario like that because I think like our entire family, and it's one thing, you might marry somebody who's rooting for another team or something like that, but yeah, it's weird. I cannot even imagine that scenario in our family. I mean, like I say, especially with my grandfather being in the club, because I know when I was a kid, he was still involved with the club, and then he was like a reporter and like back actually when they were news reporters, not just people yelling on TV. Like he was doing that. So it's I can't even imagine that. So 49ers, for example, as you go dark over there, John.
Yeah. 49ers, and then it just went. It was just so perfect. Oh my god!
It was like the Homer Simpson going into the bushes.
Like, how did that come about? Is it like the similar story? This is like a case study of John over here as the young guy.
Oh, you're gonna laugh. So obviously, I'm a Warriors fan. I follow a lot of Warriors.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so obviously Warriors fans talk about the Niners, and I wasn't the biggest American football fan to start. I thought there were too many stoppages, too many commercials, and rightfully so. I feel like
there still is, yeah,
it's a valid criticism. But then seeing them talk about the Niners, seeing them talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and fucking Shanahan messing things up with the first Super Bowl like he did the last one, it got me interested. I was like, what is all this? And then I tuned into my first game a few years back. And I was like, you know what? This is actually pretty good. So it was just mostly support by association, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of like how, disclaimer, like, big surprise here. I'm a baseball fan too. Like,
okay. Now you can definitely turn the lights off.
Right. I watch the A's, the Oakland A's, which suck, by the way. But, obviously Oakland associated with the Warriors.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like support by association. I see all these guys talking about it, and I'm just like, hey, maybe I'll take a look at how it is, and made me appreciate the sports a little bit more, trying to get into it. So obviously with the Niners, I know we're not supposed to talk about it. It stinks, but
yeah, let's not talk about it. I know I get that, like, because I'm a Lakers fan too. They were like, were you from California? I'm like, no, I'm from Istanbul. But that's the way. I mean, like Lakers, because when I was growing up, similar to what you're talking about, like Philippines, you rarely got basketball on TV.
Yeah.
And when they were showing it, it was always the finals, and it was always Lakers and Celtics. And as a kid, I rooted for Fenerbahce, who wore, navy and gold. like blue and maybe in yellow kind of thing. And so when Lakers and Celtics are playing, obviously you're rooting for like the Lakers because the colors are closer, and that's how I became like a Lakers fan as a kid. And then once you commit, you're gonna keep going. Ellen says one day there will be a plaque on your house. The AmericanScouser lived here. See, this is why I envision people 10 years down the road. It might be a lot earlier. So there'll be somebody hosting an AmericanScouser. I'll probably not be around by then. And then there'll be like my picture will be in the back over there. Like, this is the guy. He used to drink coffee.
Yeah, with the Niners cap as well. Have they won a Super Bowl by then? We'll never know.
And if you guys do that, I'm going to put this in my will. Can the picture not please have the stupid headsets?
It wouldn't fit in it. It'd cut them off. This is the guy that wanted to sell Trent because he's Scouse.
Yeah. Let's not go there. We're gonna spend another hour here if we go there.
So if you're not on Discord, you're gonna join us on Discord to get that kind of comedy. If you guys think this is comedy, because more irate over there. So, but hey, I guess we should probably get going. Otherwise, it's gonna be the afternoon coffee at this point. But we did kind of like go off trail, but that's what I love about mornings over here. But we'll call it a day. Obviously, we'll get to talk about the game a lot more with tomorrow's podcast, tomorrow night with the boys, and then Friday morning with Anan, where I can make fun of for kicking his ass on FIFA. So that should be something fun to look forward to, John, for the Friday morning. But hey, thanks as always for those following. If you're like joining us through Instagram, please head on over to YouTube as well and give us a follow and subscribe there. Hit all those buttons down below, like, share, subscribe, spread the words, grab somebody by the ear and say, hey, you should be following these bozos. And then just leave them right there once they follow. So have a great day, everybody. And we'll see you guys soon. Take care.